Today, I have a story for you guys about how one of my subscribers gets their cat stolen by a Karen. This is one of the craziest Karens I've ever heard of. Like and subscribe, and if you didn't know, you can listen to all of these stories on Spotify, link down below. And with that all being said and done, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. So our subscriber says that they lived in this small community where everybody knew each other by name. One of our subscribers' neighbors was this lady who we're gonna of course call Karen. Now, Karen was infamous in this town. She was known to be extremely entitled, and everyone knew that she would do some crazy stuff. To just give you guys a little bit of an image of what she looked like, our subscriber says that she was this middle-aged woman who always wore a fur coat, even in the summer. Her hair was dyed bright red, and she wore heavy makeup. So yeah, I have the image in my head, and hopefully you guys do too now. Anyways, though, our subscriber goes on to say that people in the town, tried their best to avoid Karen as much as possible, because anytime they'd have an interaction with her, it wasn't good. Regardless, though, Karen always seemed to find a way to insert herself into other people's lives. If a neighbor was having a cookout or something, she would often show up uninvited. Birthday parties and other community events, she would always show up, even though nobody asked her or wanted her to be there. And once she arrived, it was hard to get her to leave. See, you couldn't directly tell Karen to leave, because if you did that, she would have an explosive meltdown, and it just wouldn't be pretty. This actually happened once at a neighbor's child's birthday party that the Karen for some reason decided to show up to. See, it was we're gonna call her Little Susie. It was Little Susie's 8th birthday, and Karen heard some music coming from one of her neighbor's backyards. She was out on a walk at the time, and she decided to go over and see what the commotion was about. As she got there, she noticed it was a birthday party, and I guess she just figured that she was invited or something, because of course they had food at this birthday party, and she just went up and grabbed a plate and started taking some food. And that's whenever the father of Susie came over and told Karen, hey, listen, we appreciate you stopping by, but nobody actually invited you, and you're just here taking food. Don't you think that's a bit rude? And that's whenever the Karen just had an absolute freak out. She started screaming, like screeching at this kid's birthday party. The kid started crying and ran inside, and eventually the dad had enough of this, and he just called the cops and had her removed from the party. The screeches and yelling from that time could be heard from anywhere in the neighborhood, and you just didn't want to get her to be mad, or else it would happen again and she would screech and yell, and it just isn't a good time. Anyways, as our subscribers said, Karen's behavior was just absolutely unpredictable, and it was near impossible to ignore this woman. If you walked past her, she was going to be giving you all of her extreme opinions about things, and you're gonna have to have like a 30-minute conversation with her. And if you didn't believe some of the things that she was saying, you better just keep it to yourself, because the second you say something that opposed her beliefs, that was also game over. She would get extremely hostile, and she would just go on and preach about why she was always right and how it was very rude to think that she wasn't. So when our subscriber first met Karen, they didn't realize how crazy she was. But the day that we're going to be talking about was the same day that they realized that this person was an absolute nutcase. So our subscriber's family moved into this new community. It was the first week that they were living there, and our subscriber has this cat named Fluffy. Now, their cat Fluffy loved going on walks, and they would take Fluffy on a walk every single day. Well, one day our subscriber was walking their cat in the nearby park whenever they suddenly bumped into Karen. She immediately started going on and on to our subscriber and talking to her as if they were best friends. Mind you, our subscriber's like 16 at the time, so it's kind of weird, but Karen was trying to get a good first impression on our subscriber here. She was going on and on about her life and how everyone in this community was out to get her and how she was always right and how all of her neighbors are wrong. And she started talking about all these different scenarios, but instead of it being from the bad point of view, it was from the Karen's point of view. She talked about how she called the cops whenever she was at Susie's birthday party one time. She was just trying to get that good first impression and cover up all of her bad stories that our subscriber was eventually going to hear from other neighbors. Our subscriber was honestly pretty sketched out. They didn't really want to be talking to this middle-aged woman in the middle of the park. They were just trying to take their cat for a walk and go on with their day. So as the Karen's talking to our subscriber and basically just interrupting her walk, our subscriber starts to walk away and, try to say bye to the Karen. But that's whenever the Karen takes notice of her cat Fluffy. The Karen at this point became very fixated on the cat. She switched the subject to cats and talked about how much she loved cats and how she used to own a cat just like Fluffy that looked exactly the same. And honestly, our subscriber was already sketched out a bit. They didn't want to be talking to her in the first place, like I said. But now she was like really admiring this cat and saying how much she loved her. And she was saying some weird stuff like, oh, I'm gonna take this little Fluffy home. Fluffy's gonna be mine. And at first, our subscriber thought that she was just talking to talk and, you know, trying to be funny. And at the time, Karen was petting Fluffy, but then she went to try and pick up the cat. At this point, the subscriber had to put their foot down there like, hey, listen, don't pick up my cat. It doesn't really like that. And, you know, the cat didn't get mad or anything. That's whenever Karen had a little bit of a freak out. She started yelling at the subscriber, saying that she knows how to take care of cats and not to tell her what to do with the cat. Now, this was the subscriber's cat. Like, how dare this Karen come over and start bossing her around on how to take care of her own cat. The subscriber pulled Fluffy out of the Karen's hands, and the Karen was getting super mad, yelling and screaming at her, saying how dare our subscriber take the cat away from her. The subscriber started to run away at this point, yelling at Karen to leave her and the cat alone, and eventually she got back to her house and was able to bring Fluffy in safely. Her parents weren't home at the time, and at this point our subscriber was pretty scared. She didn't know if Karen was following her or if Karen might have known where she lived, and she was scared at this point that Karen was gonna come to her house. You know, the Karen was all worked up and she was having this huge freak out, so she could only imagine what Karen might do if she showed up at the house. Maybe she'd try and take Fluffy, maybe she'd try to teach our subscriber a lesson. She really didn't know, and our subscriber was terrified at this point. She went around and put the blinds up on all the windows, locked all the doors, and she took Fluffy up to her room and closed and locked that door as well. A little bit of time passed, and her parents were supposed to be home about like 5 or 10 minutes ago, but they still weren't home. And that's all that the subscriber was waiting for at this point. She just wanted her parents to be home so they could tell them, but they were nowhere to be found. And they weren't answering their phone either, which happens occasionally. This isn't the first time they've been late to coming home. Sometimes the parents get stuck at work, and, you know, at work they can't use their phones. Anyway, she was just waiting and waiting. Any second now, the parents were going to be home and everything was going to be okay. And that's whenever she heard a loud banging on her front door. At this point, our subscriber's heart dropped. They were absolutely terrified. They were really thinking that this had to have been Karen. She stayed in her room with the cat and just ignored the knock. But the knocking didn't just simply go away. She heard even more banging on her front door, this time followed by some screaming. She could make out the words, "Don't be scared. I'm just trying to be nice." At this point, she knew it was Karen, and just to confirm it, she took a peek out the window. And sure enough, she saw Karen on her front doorstep. But then Karen looked up and she saw our subscribers staring at her out of the window. Once our subscriber noticed, they quickly closed the window and started hiding. They could hear the Karen screaming up to the window, "I know you're in there. Don't worry, I'm not gonna bite you." The Karen kept banging and kept yelling until she said, "Screw this, I know your window's unlocked and I'm coming in." Just as she said that, our subscriber heard the garage door open. Her parents were finally home. Either that or the Karen was sneaking in through the garage door. But since the Karen just said that she was gonna sneak in through a window, she knew it surely had to be her parents. She ran down to the garage and immediately told her parents what was happening, and her dad got out of the car and ran to the front door, only to see that there was nobody there. Our subscriber was like, I swear, she was just there. She said she was gonna break into our house. She said she was gonna come in through the window. She wanted to steal Fluffy." And the dad was like, "Listen, there's nothing to be scared about, all right? If you need a babysitter, we could set that up. I understand you might be scared being home alone. We thought you were ready to be home all by yourself, but maybe you just need a babysitter." The dad wasn't believing our subscriber. Eventually, our subscriber gave up trying to convince her parents what happened. Her parents just kept saying that this is a very nice community and that there's nobody like that here, and that they knew that being in a new house could be scary sometimes, and they insisted that if she needs a babysitter that she could get one. But our subscriber did not want a babysitter. They just wanted this Karen to be dealt with. Anyways, the next day, our subscriber wanted to take Fluffy for its daily walk. However, they were scared that they were going to bump into Karen again. But the cat just kept meowing and meowing at our subscriber, begging to go on a walk, because every single day the cat got to go on a walk and it was something that it looked forward to. Eventually, our subscriber caved in and put the harness on Fluffy and took her outside. She figured that the chances she was going to run into Karen again for the second day in a row was very low, and she also decided not to go to that same park where she saw Karen. Instead, she was just walking around the neighborhood, and just as she was approaching back to her house, Karen came out of what seemed like absolutely nowhere. Now, Karen always looked crazy with her bright red hair and the crazy makeup and all of that, but at this point, our subscribers said that she looked absolutely manic. She wore a creepily big smile on her face, and she started yelling at our subscribers, saying that it was very rude of her to run away like that, and that she was super happy to see, quote unquote, her little Fluffy again. The Karen, slowly walking towards Fluffy, said, "Hey, why wouldn't you hand Fluffy over so I could say hi to my little girl?" As the Karen approached her slowly, the subscriber was also backing up at the same rate. Eventually, the Karen picked up pace a little bit, and she started talking about how she would take great care of Fluffy, saying that Fluffy would be better taken care of in her own hands. That's whenever our subscribers started freaking out even more. They started to run away towards their house, which was only a block away, and Karen started chasing her. She was screaming, saying that Fluffy needed to be at her house, saying stuff like, "Fluffy is sad with you. She'd be happier at my house. I'd buy her the good food and give her fun toys, and if you truly loved your cat, you'd give her to me." Our subscriber was absolutely baffled, and they were just running basically for their life and for the cat's life at this point. Eventually, as they approached the house, they saw their parents standing on the front porch. Immediately, they started yelling, "Mom, Dad, please help, help. The Karen's trying to steal Fluffy." And luckily this time, the parents actually saw Karen chasing our subscriber. Now, once Karen realized that the parents were there, she started running in the other direction, but that's whenever the parents called the cops. They reported what had happened, but the cops said that they needed proof, otherwise they couldn't really do anything. The parents were very frustrated at this, and our subscriber was really worried. The days moving forward, even though the cat was begging and yelling and meowing at our subscriber to go on a walk, they refused and kept the cat inside. They did not want to risk another encounter with Karen. Our subscriber and the family went days without seeing Karen. They figured maybe she was done. She had learned her lesson, and she, understood that the cops had been called and what she was doing had been reported. However, that wasn't the case, because just a few days later, Karen showed up at their door once again. She was knocking on the door saying, "I just can't stop thinking about that poor cat and how it has to live with you guys." She would spend a few minutes banging on the door, and then after she didn't get any attention, eventually she would leave. But the family started to realize that things were starting to go missing from their yard. For example, their garden gnomes that were sitting out front disappeared. Well, I'm sure that they didn't disappear. Somebody had to have stolen them. The next day, after some knocking and ignoring, a few of their bird feeders that were sitting on their front porch disappeared. Karen was now also stealing stuff from their property. Now, anytime the parents would give the cops a call, the cops would say that 911 is for emergencies only, and it was obvious that they really didn't seem to believe these reports. They seemed to think that the parents were the true Karens and not the actual Karen, and this was mostly due to the fact that they never had any evidence of anything happening. That's whenever the parents decided to install a Ring doorbell camera. So this time, whatever the Karen did would be caught on camera. So one day, our subscriber returned from school, and they walked into their house, and the first thing they do whenever they get home from school is usually feed Fluffy. She's usually around her food bowl meowing for some food. However, very unusually, Fluffy was not near her food bowl. Immediately, our subscribers started looking around for Fluffy. She was absolutely tearing the house apart, looking in every single corner, any little hiding spot that Fluffy would usually be in, and she was nowhere to be found. Minutes later, they get a knock on their door. It was Karen, and she was holding Fluffy. She said that she had found Fluffy wandering around outside and that she was worried about her. Of course, our subscriber did not believe this, and she snatched Fluffy out of Karen's hands, went inside, and slammed the front door in her face. She immediately called her parents and told them what happened, and unknowingly, Karen had been caught in 4K. Well, actually, not 4K, Ring doorbell cameras are not the best quality, but she was still caught. The parents called the cops, and the cops were, of course, mad at first. "We told you that this is for emergencies only. Now you guys are going to get in trouble if you aren't reporting an emergency. This better be an emergency." That's whenever the parents finally said that they have proof of what had happened. They showed it to the police, and the next day, in the morning paper, it showed that Karen had been arrested on multiple counts of theft, home invasion, and many more other charges. She was going to be in jail for at least a few years. And the family was very relieved because they had just moved into this new house in this new community, and they were fearing that they were going to have to move again because of this Karen. But with her gone, they were finally at peace. Fluffy was safe and sound, and also super happy because because they got to start going on their walks again.